front rows, maju ke depan, so it's easier for our colleagues to come in later. Welcome to the plenary discussion of Sub-Team 2, Harnessing Big Data and Fostering Cultural Practices, and Sub-Team 5, Culture-Based Economy in the Era of the Industrial Revolution 4.0. My name is Itham Bakhter Setiadi. I'm your facilitator for today. Today we are going to discuss points of an action plan pertaining to the sub-themes of yesterday's discussion until 11 this morning. With me is the moderator for sub-team 2, Pak. And actually we are also waiting for the moderator of sub-team 5. Oh, she here already? Ah, okay. Badian, if you would please join me on the stage to together we facilitate the discussion of action plan points. Well, yesterday we have discussed topics of the sub-teams separately, and these are the highlights. Can we show sub-team 2? Mas, boleh ke file sub-team 2? These are the reports and these are the highlights. Yesterday we already talked about best practices. Naik? Boleh dinaikkan? Turun. Halo? Terus ke bawah. Scroll. Okay. And then main challenges and problems as well as the identification of actors and stakeholders related to the sub-team, and then future envisioned by speakers and steps towards this future. Next, apa? Scroll ke bawah lagi. Okay. And then, of course, the expected role of IFAC and other interesting points. Pak Idaman, would you like to add something? Or are these in general okay? These are the highlights of yesterday's discussion. Maybe, yeah, if you have some points. There's a
As far as I remember yesterday, there is still a not sufficient perspective on how the cultural issues can interact with data. It's not yet explored deep enough.
Deep enough, okay. So we note that the interaction between cultural features with data production, storage, and so on.
Has not been.
Yeah, has not been explored deeply enough. So we note that, and then we come back to that in the discussion. And for sub-team 5, Badian, here are the points. Boleh ke file sub-team 5? Okay, also we have discussed best practices. Sorry, we have to best practices, main challenges and problems, actors and stakeholders, and the future envisioned. Just quickly, so to remind us about yesterday's discussion, and then other interesting points. So if you would like to add something which has been excluded from these reports, you can do that now before we go to the discussion. Okay, so then after the discussion, or after yesterday's discussion, the team of rapporteurs and moderators came up with a summary and with the following proposal of the action plan. Boleh ke file action plan? Yes, this is it. So the proposal is to discuss this action plan and then also discuss further or elaborate further on issues raised just now by Pak Idaman. Yeah. And of course the target is to agree on the points of the action plan, which then later will be formulated again to become the Jakarta statement to be read today's afternoon. So are there, I mean, this is open for discussion. We're still free to change, add, or yes, sure.
So I think regarding the big data for cultural diversity is really important, ya Pak, ya.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if a data is stored somewhere, the main thing actually how people could actually access it. So
Okay.
it's going to need to be like an open data policy in according to this one. So probably there are some data which is could not be accessed like by anyone, but there are some part of data which can be accessed by anyone. So
Okay.
it need to be completed with an open data policy.
Right.
I don't know which ministry would be able to release that kind of regulations. And the second thing is actually the big data will be useless if it's not analyzed.
Okay.
So means that all data stored somewhere, everyone can actually store the data from different part of Indonesia. Could be in the form of like blockchain, ledger kind of things. But thing is, all data, every informations will be useless if it's not analyzed. So there will be another processing things
Okay.
after the data is being stored. So we need to know what kind of field, what kind of variables need to be analyzed. And then so right after that, everyone who can access the data after being analyzed can be use it for further actions.
Right.
For instance, like they can do predictions in terms of market. They can do prescription in terms of how the culture need to be preserved, for instance. So
Okay.
could be like that. So the third thing probably as a complementary of this action, there will people need to be trained on how to actually use the data that being analyzed. So the thing is the three
Yeah.
the three things that need to be added to these actions.
Okay.
The first one is the open data policy.
Right.
Second thing is about the processing after the data being collected, the data analytical thing. So need to be some, I don't know, agency or department
Right.
inside the ministry which can actually do the data analytical things. And the third is about the capacity building in terms on how you can do, you can proceed with the data you get from this big data. I think that's
Sorry about it.
my point of view.
Okay, good. Yeah, we'll take note of that too. So we have already some suggestions. Before we proceed, are there any questions about yesterday's discussion highlights or what we are going to do today? Before we start the discussing further or elaborating more on harnessing big data for cultural diversity and culture-based economy in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. If we don't, I mean, if we can, there are no questions, we can then proceed. I would like to remind them that because we are going to formulate an action plan, that practical solutions are preferred, maybe based on best practices that were mentioned yesterday, just a suggestion, so that then we have concrete suggestions, concrete actions in mind when we are formulating this action plan, which then of course will be an input towards the third World Culture Forum in Indonesia. Okay, no questions? If not, then we can just start by reading and analyzing the proposed action plan of sub-theme 2 and sub-theme 5. So, how do we do it? Are we going to read? We can still change everything. Of course, there will be a legal drafters, so we don't have to worry about titik koma. We don't have to worry about grammars and so on. But it's more on the substance of the proposed action plan. So maybe we start with discussing Pak Idaman's suggestion about the need to deeper elaborate the relation. Sorry, can we use the so then we can all hear?
Is there something more down there?
This down there.
Huh?
It is, yeah, sure. It's long. Or just short. Okay.
Let's scroll first.
Okay.
Is this? Oh,
Let me read it out so then we can have a glimpse of everything,
I mean,
an overview.
Is there
Yeah.
something more?
Yeah, there's sure.
Okay,
There,
okay,
there are two.
okay.
So subteam 2, harnessing big data for cultural diversity. In the era of big data, companies use algorithms to study customers' tastes and propose new products. This in turn dictates cultural contents and products made available to each individual, thus influencing the tastes and choices of cultural experience. The influence of algorithm in shaping individuals' taste, cultural preference, and worldview needs to be further analyzed. Individuals' privacy and sovereign right over the personal data should be respected. In witness thereof, we propose these following points as action plan. 1, advocate data policies. Can we scroll it up a bit? Lagi? Bisa dinaikin lagi? Terus. Turun. Ya, oke. Turun. Okay. Point 1, advocate data policies that respects ethical principles, including data sovereignty, privacy, and cultural differences. Point 2, work together against any attempts to utilize big data to create and/or spread cultural prejudices, divisions, conflicts, and violence. Point 3, create a mechanism which guarantee that utilization of intellectual properties always respects geographical indication. And then for subteam 5, the proposed action plan, boleh turun lagi, scroll. Lagi, terus, okay. Subteam 5, culture-based economy in the era of Industrial Revolution 4.0, concentration of ownership by global online media companies, monopolizing the process of production, distribution, and dissemination of cultural contents, constitutes a risk to cultural plurality and freedom of expressions. Diversity of stakeholders participating in the production and dissemination of cultural contents is a precondition for a democratic and just society. This asymmetry in the value chains need to be rectified so as to reflect, reflect the voice of every nation and community of the world, in particular the developing countries. In witness thereof, we propose these following points as action plan. Point 1, ensure access of knowledge or technology for all to create equal playing fields. Point 2, develop a monitoring and evaluating mechanism that ensure a just and equitable cultural value chain for all members of global cultural ecosystem. Point 3, create a, boleh turun lagi? Scroll ke bawah. Habis? Okay. Create a common platform which promote people-driven technology that deepens empathy, social solidarity, and human sensibility. And point 4, advocate the recognition of diversity inside creative industry, not only its cultural content, but also the cultural background of the people behind it. So these 7 points have been drafted by the team of moderators and rapporteurs for us to discuss today. We can still change it, we can add, we can subtract, so that the action plan can be agreeable to all of us. So if you go back to subteam 2, yeah. So for the first paragraph, are there any suggestions, questions, objections even? In the era of big data, companies use algorithms to study customers' tastes and propose new products. This has been discussed yesterday, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. Yes, can we agree on this first sentence? Yes, okay. This in turn dictates cultural contents and products made available to each individual, thus influencing the tastes and choices of cultural experiences. Ini juga, sorry, this was also discussed yesterday. Correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't here. The influence of algorithm is in shaping individuals' taste, cultural preference, and worldview needs to be further analyzed.
Yes.
So, Pak Idaman's your point.
Yes.
It has to be analyzed. So we are saying to whoever is going to hold the World Culture Forum, the next World Culture Forum, that before that, an analysis has to be done. And then individuals' privacy and sovereign right over the personal data should be respected. So this is in terms of policy, as Badian mentioned before. And then in witness thereof, we propose these following points as action plan. So I invite now all of us to discuss these 3 points. Maybe we start with the moderators. Do you want to change, add, or subtract?
Not yet.
Not yet. Ibu Dian?
I'm still confused with the phrase, the influence of algorithm in shaping individuals' taste, cultural preference, and worldview. I guess we need to put it in other way around.
Right.
So it is more into all the behaviors, taste, everything of the people, and compiled, then analyzed by using algorithm.
Okay, so slowly, so we can then directly change the wordings of this sentence.
So because we are not influenced by algorithm, but our behavior, our preferences are analyzed to be further predicting something.
Right.
Right.
If you can dictate it, I mean, like slowly, so then the operators, yes, later? Yes.
Okay, like the behavior.
Pelan-pelan,
Okay, gimana?
Can somebody then directly type, yes?
Okay.
Okay.
The customer's taste and behavior actually is not only taste but also behavior that is analyzed by the big data, Pak.
Okay.
So actually the first phrase also need to be changed. It's not only the taste but also the behavior. Behavior means also the characteristic and everything included in one word.
Customer taste and behavior, yes.
Yeah.
And behavior and proposed new verb.
Yeah, behavior.
Yeah. Again, we don't have to worry about the grammar, that will be corrected later on.
Okay, so for that phrase, the influence of customer, the customer's behaviors and taste influence the algorithm. The algorithm in
And behavior.
gimana ya kalimatnya ya?
Yeah,
enaknya?
just put it, one way to do it is just put it on paper first and then later on we correct.
Okay, so probably you can just put the red mark on that. So probably later on I will come back with the correct phrase. Yeah, but because it is important, it is the main understanding of the big data analysis.
Right.
So it means that we understand the people, not algorithm dictate us.
Right.
This phrase actually another way around in regards on understanding of big data usage.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just.
In a matter of substance, based on the presentation and based on the cases, it's actually two-way round. Okay, so the data analysis, data collected, is actually made and influenced by the behavior, taste, and so on. But the other way around also happened. The dominant analysis, the result of algorithm also shapes it. So we are also shaped by the result of big data as well as we influence it. So it's two-way.
So it's in both ways, yes.
Yeah, the influence is two-way.
Okay.
And we have to be, I mean, the concern is that we want to be conscious that big data can also influence us, influence our course of the culture.
Right.
So this will two way around.
I would like invite Bapak. Do you have something to add to this discussion? Okay, but you can say it. I mean, you can voice your concerns. Can we have another mic?
Yeah, because yesterday we discussed several points and cases on this, that a big data algorithm and analyzing our behaviors, trying to map. Yesterday's case is about U.S. inequality between location and earnings and tax behavior. And when you use that to propose, like in a case of landings or job admissions, using that analysis on big data, you're actually feeding your own bias to the big data algorithm, and the bias, the inequality is becoming enlarged. And that's the problem that we need to address at first before. That's exactly by Idam's point. There's a feedback loop between the big data algorithm and our behavior, and we need to be aware of that.
Okay.
I think
it's both ways.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that sentence. That's what the sentence wants to address.
Okay. So let's make a decision. Can we agree that actually it's working both ways? So there's an analysis of trends, behaviors, and preferences, taste, but also the other way around. The result of the analysis or the process of analyzing is also influencing how then people behave, and
It is more into a circular process.
it is a
actually.
circular process,
Yeah.
right? So okay, we'll put this in the draft. This in turn details companies use algorithms to study customer taste and behavior. So it's not just to study, but it's also to influence. Is it? Okay. So companies use algorithm to study. First sentence, to study. Yes, to study and and yes, and influence. And influence customer taste and behavior in order to propose new products, right? Okay, continue. So, I think we can, yang highlight kuningnya dihapus saja. Okay. Next, this in turn dictates cultural contents and products made available to each individual, thus influencing their taste and choices of cultural experience. Yes, actually we are, okay, no problem. The customer taste, and this was your point, Mbak Dian. The customer taste and behavior okay, let's say it like this. The cycle of analysis and influence, make it simple. The cycle of analysis and influence needs to be further analyzed. So needs to be further analyzed. Further analyzed. Analyzed. Okay. Analyzed. Yes. Lies the pakai D. Okay. Yeah, does it reflect your concern or answer your any suggestions, objections? So sort of like summarizing, then pointing out that there has to be an analysis before even addressing the issues further. Right? Okay. If not, then we just itu dikasih garis itu ada yang strike through. Di atas ya, satu kalimat itu di strike through aja atau dikasih merah. Merah, oke. Oke, Can we move on? Yes. Then individuals' privacy and sovereign rights right over the personal data should be respected. I think this is agreeable. Yes? Or are there any objections to this? It is important, but also, in terms of policy, sometimes investigations need to access private data. So if we say this, it means it's off limits. Okay, don't make it too complicated. But it should be respected, so this is our general consensus, yes? In witness thereof, we propose these following points as action plan. Okay, so we have stated the problems, now we are proposing the solutions, or the steps towards the solutions. First, advocate data policies that respect ethical principles, including data sovereignty, privacy, and cultural differences. Any suggestions or questions? Does it make sense? This has been drafted by other people, so we can question it. Okay, so this is going to be quick. Okay, can we agree on point 1, or do you want to add something, or do you need more time to reflect? Yes, Pak Yudi, please. There's a mic, please use.
For data, maybe we may add some intellectual property, data that is protected by intellectual property.
How do you formulate it? Data is
maybe
intellectual property.
Yeah, data that is protected by intellectual property rights.
Oh, okay. Advocate data policies that respect ethical principles and intellectual property rights.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
So we put it up front. Okay. So we advocate data policies that, yes. Sorry? Yeah, can you repeat? Help me.
Advocate data policies that respect ethical principles, including data sovereignty, privacy, intellectual property, and cultural differences.
Right.
Is it clear enough?
Okay. So the intellectual properties are put up front, are right after ethical principles. Advocate data policies that respects ethical principles and intellectual properties.
Okay.
So because this is one level, ethical principles and intellectual properties rights. Rights, yeah? Property rights.
Yeah.
Property rights. Is it?
Not all intellectual property is protected by laws. For intellectual property, that's not all intellectual property is protected by laws. Some of them becoming public domain because there's a time to protect. For example, copyright, it is 70 years protection time, and after that it is will be public domain and can be exploited and utilized by. Thank you.
Yes, but still after it became public domain, then still the intellectual property has to be respected. Right, okay, so it's in front, I guess.
Yeah, ethical principles and intellectual property.
Right, okay, point 1. So, yes, please, the mic.
I'm not really sure if I'm getting the point right, but saying that we need data policies that respect ethical principles presupposes that we already have ethical principles.
Right.
We don't have them yet. So we need to formulate ethical principles in the first place to advocate data policies that respect them.
Agreed. As a point. So how about it? Should we add another point? So in front of the first here stated in the draft, so that we have to formulate or elaborate ethical principles.
Okay, maybe just formulate a moral that allows us to interact with modern technology in general, because we don't have that yet. We never had in the first place in the last century.
Right. But given the fact that it has not existed for, in the last century, is it actually feasible to...
It definitely is. I mean,
Yes.
just it's common sense to me. I mean,
Right.
let's just take big data analysis. To me, it's not really respecting my privacy or my rights that Google analyzes all data before asking me, and I need to disable the data collection. So what if Google just disabled it in the first place, but gives me the opportunity to use that?
Yes, yes.
But that's just one example. So
Right.
we need to stick together, come to a common ground about morals and ethical principles. And if we have this, then we can go further on. We cannot make the second step before the first step, because we will fall.
Right. Point taken, but I'll keep in mind that we are here looking for practical solutions towards the next World Culture Forum, so it's actually rather short term. And that's why I asked, given the fact that it hasn't been done in the last 100 years, as you said, is it actually feasible to do so in a short term? So maybe there's a practical solutions going towards what you are asking. That's my suggestion. I'm not objecting to your point, but how to make it practical, how to make it workable.
If you want to make it workable, right? First of all, the point you're making that there is we have a gap. The technology and information is advancing rapidly, and it brings us to dilemmas and decisions that are not yet, that we have no standard or no ethical ground yet. This is what happens, right? So we have to elaborate, yeah. But elaborating such thing is a major undertaking, right? If you want to put it apart in a practical proposition, you see, the sentence might be opens to open opportunities to elaborate, right? So we don't propose to produce the ethic, but we propose that we should open endeavors or open works, open opportunities to elaborate. So which will be translated in discussion, research, and so on, but not the product. The product it will take time. So we
Yes.
propose the forum or the elaboration.
Yeah.
So number one is we should open opportunities to elaborate the search for moral and ethical principles in the data and information and technology.
Just try it out. Well, we add 1 point.
Yeah.
Point 1 will become.
One
Yes,
will
ini
become-
enter aja. No. We
we-
urge or we propose.
We
or
propose
silakan.
that we open opportunities to elaborate the search for ethical and moral frameworks in the field of data, information, and technology.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
put it first.
That moral
One first.
framework in the arena of not the field, arena of data, information, and technology.
Yeah, data, information, and technology.
Yeah.
Technology. Okay.
So we don't promise the result.
Yes, of course not.
Okay.
Cannot. Okay. So we propose. So the first action plan, or first point for the action plan, become a proposal to open opportunities to elaborate the search for ethical and moral frameworks in the arena of data information and technology. So that this is the arena, this is the common ground, as you were saying, to actually come up with a formulation about data information and technology. That goes before the second point, which is advocating data policies that respects ethical principles and intellectual property, including data sovereignty, privacy, and cultural differences. Can we agree? I mean, the first point, is it okay? Yes. Then the second point, can we agree on the second point? Yes? Okay, so we're moving on. The third point is work together against any attempts to utilize big data to create and or spread cultural prejudices, divisions, conflicts, and violences. So, basically misusing technology. I think this is agreeable, yes? Or? Okay, let's move on. And the fourth is create a mechanism which guarantees that utilization of intellectual properties always respect geographical indication. This is, I think it's related to the spread of cultures or the cultural diversity actually. Is it, Pak Idaman? I think it was your sub-team, yeah? So, create a mechanism which guarantees that utilization of intellectual properties always respects geographical indication, in effect, safeguarding cultural diversity. Yes? Yes, Pak Yudi.
Thank you, Mr. Idam. I think not only geographical indication, but if it is possible, I propose to to put in like a traditional cultural expression and traditional cultural expressions and traditional knowledge.
Okay.
Because it is in our advancement law.
It is in the advancement law, yes. The law number 5, Indonesia's law number 5 of 2017 actually states that traditional knowledge and cultural expressions should be even protected.
Yeah, traditional knowledge, please. Yes.
Traditional cultural
and tradition.
Yes, traditional cultural
knowledge
and knowledge. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. No, not traditional knowledge. Is it traditional? Yes, silakan Pak. We have 2 more.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what mechanism in that context mean. Like create a mechanism which guarantee that utilization of intellectual properties always respect geographical indication. I don't really get that sentence, and particularly, mechanism. What do I have to think about?
Right. Okay. Papa, similar point or different? Different. Okay. Let's discuss this first. What kind of mechanism? Create a mechanism which guarantees. So the mechanism guarantees something. Could be law, could be law enforcement, could be something like that. But as you said, if it doesn't make sense as it stands here, then we have, of course, to change it. Do you have something, in mind? Can you propose change?
Okay.
Bapak in the back, sorry. Do you have a... I get your point. You don't understand.
I don't understand the point.
Do you understand what's actually... Can you agree with what's actually hinted here towards, what we are aiming at?
So is it like you want to protect local culture and you're searching for a mechanism? Is that the point, or?
Yes, it's a way, we are trying to find a way to respect local culture, traditional cultural expressions, traditional knowledge, and of course the makers, the producers.
Okay. So for example, you want to protect batik or other...
the producers,
for
yes.
example,
Yeah, the production, not the batik.
Okay. And
not the product.
Okay, and mechanism, it's quite like an abstract.
Right.
We're talking about like practical terms, but we're
Yes.
using the word mechanism. That could be anything, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, I would argue it
Yes.
should be maybe a bit more specific.
Yes.
But to be honest, I don't have
Okay.
a clue.
Maybe
to-
Pak Yudi, you can help? No, Pak Yudi.
It's okay. Okay, thank you. We have like a positive law.
Yes.
Positive law like patent laws, copyright laws,
Yes.
and also we also have like trademark laws.
Yes.
For example, it is they have each own instruments
Yes.
to guarantee that they will consider there are such patent examiners
Right.
to examine whether it is any infringement, if there any permissions, or it is
Yes.
something in
Okay,
the place. I think.
yes. So the fact that we have actually, we already have laws, we already have legal instruments, and if not institutions. I mean, it seems that in yesterday's discussion, we found that actually it doesn't work. I mean, not in total. So it's not comprehensive enough. So that's why we need something else, or in addition maybe to the existing framework. So maybe something on the ground, or something that actually enforces these legal, I mean, the laws and so on. Although we have institutions and so on. So maybe going into that direction, what kind of action actually do we need? Is it a campaign? Is it, trying to boiling down this abstract word of mechanism? So is it a campaign, or is it a movement? Is it a forum, or suggestions? Anybody? Action pattern, yes. So we create an action pattern, or we urge people to create an action pattern rather than a mechanism, yeah? Oops. Yes, going down again to action pattern. Where is it? Yes, mechanism, strike through. Okay. Dicoret apa namanya, di strike through aja, jangan dibuang. Yes. Create an action pattern which guarantees that utilization of intellectual property always respects geographical indication, traditional cultural expression, and traditional knowledge. Better? More concrete? I mean, can we agree to change mechanism into action pattern? Action pattern, then we have something more concrete than just an abstract idea of mechanism. Yes? Sorry, can you use the mic, please?
Yeah, I understand it. I think only geographical, I don't want to be a grammar Nazi, but geographical indication is also for me a bit vague.
Okay.
Term. So why not simple? You know, we're talking about local culture, more like clearer.
Right. I think it's, Pak Yudi, you can help me later on, but I think this is a technical term, because in the intellectual property rights law, there is this concept of geographical indicator. Yes.
Thank
please.
you. Please allow me to give some brainstorming. Actually, Indonesia already ratified the convention concerning about the WTO, ratified by the law number 7, 1994. We also ratified a convention concerning about the UNESCO, like intangible cultural heritage, and also we have ratified the convention concerning the cultural values, and also concerning the protection of cultural expressions. And we implement, we comply with that international law, and we put it into our positive law. And the terms concerning like protection, recognition, and also utilization, it is internationally recognized, and also in several forums like WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organizations, and also in the UNESCO. And this is like popular,
Commons.
yeah, commons. Yeah, it is. We have like such experts and to discuss this for so many years about the terms and terminologies that internationally recognized.
Okay, yeah. But
Yeah, I mean, yes, this is about, I mean, but still, I guess the objection is valid because this draft, of course, it has to be technically correct, but on the other hand, it has also to be applicable. In order to be applicable, or people have to understand. Non-experts also have to understand what we are saying here. So there's a choice between, as you were saying, locality, I mean, that respect locality of the expressions, the products, or we still use this term, geographical indication.
But
So we have a choice.
to who are you talking with this form? Who is going to read it? If like only technical people read it, okay. But if you want a big, large public, you know, you want it more simple and more that everybody understands it, right? So I think it depends on the public.
Yeah, this is actually intended to go for a general public. So, yeah, sure. Please do.
So actually, I want to see from the different perspective. Here, the title of the sub-themes actually big data, right?
Yes.
But in point 4, we haven't mentioned at all about big data. So we lose the subject of this phrase.
Okay.
So probably you need to create the action pattern which guarantee the utilization of big data,
Yes.
which respects intellectual properties.
So change intellectual properties, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We lose the subject actually.
Okay.
And regarding the geographical indication, actually part of IP. So should we mention the both because it is part of IP actually. It is geographical indication actually the industrial properties. So it is still part of the IP.
Yes.
Yeah. So should we mention it or you want to underline the importance of GI because the IG, the IG is really important. Like you said, Sumba they already put IG for 80s of their.
Yes. Tenun. Yes.
Yeah. Except that you want to put attention or emphasize on IG. Actually, IG is already part of intellectual property.
Yes.
Yeah.
So intellectual properties, which reflect intellectual properties, traditional expression. So how about create an action pattern which guarantees the utilization of big data which respects intellectual properties of traditional cultural expressions and traditional knowledge? Clearer?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
let's do that.
That's better, yeah.
Yes.
Action pattern could include the registration, the restorations, the commercializations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, we have two. Ibu first and then you. Yes. Can you help somebody help, please? Use the mic. Yes. Thank you.
On point 4, I was wondering if the terms cultural expression, traditional knowledge is just changed into cultural values.
Cultural values, yes, why not?
Because cultural expression seems to just limit the interpretation.
Right.
And I think cultural values is expressed in cultural expressions and activities and knowledge as well.
And also knowledge. Yeah. Okay, good. Yes. Can we just put it down first? So traditional culture change. No, not that one. And always respect. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, not traditional, but cultural values, intellectual properties of, and cultural values. Then. The cultural values is larger than local wisdom, because some values are not wise at all. I mean, it depends. I mean, cultural values by definition are relative, yeah? I mean, they're localized, so other people can see them as wise or not wise. But if you take local wisdom, wisdom is, of course, produced by wise people. So create an action pattern which guarantees the utilization of big data which respects intellectual properties of traditional and cultural values. And that's it. Yes? And always respect geographical indication. No, we were talking about intellectual property. Well, okay. Jangan digaris bawah dulu. Big data ini jangan digaris bawah dulu. Ya, setelah komanya dikasih garis straight to. Ya, terus. Oke. Ya. Is it like this? What we mean? Create an action pattern which guarantees the utilization of big data, which respects intellectual properties of traditional and cultural values, or intellectual properties pertaining to. Yeah, okay, this is grammar. Sorry? Okay, intellectual properties, comma, historical and cultural values. What do you mean by historical? Yes.
For example, like from the kingdom of Majapahit, historical values. No?
Yes.
Historical values is not existing.
Yes, but it's then passed down through cultures, so it will be included in cultural values if
Included
it's still actual.
Historical and
If
cultural
not, it's
values
part
is the
of
same.
it's part of the past.
Okay.
Part of the past. Okay.
I mean, intangible cultural heritage is
Included in cultural values.
It is included
Yes.
in cultural values.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean reflected.
Okay.
If we talk about cultural values, it will be intangible cultural values, will be historical, heritage, and so on and so forth. Okay, good. Create an action pattern which guarantees the utilization of big data, which respects intellectual property of traditional and cultural. Comma. Intellectual properties, comma, of-nya di hapus saja. Traditional and cultural values. Yes. Traditional values and cultural values. Ya, okay lah. Traditions. Just cultural values, yeah. Intellectual properties and cultural values. Just put it like that. So it's simpler. Endnya nggak usah. Endnya biar aja. Komanya nanti hapus. Yes. Okay, coba. Intellectual properties and cultural values. It's simple enough. Create an action pattern which guarantees the utilization of big data, which respects intellectual properties and cultural values. Okay, yes?
No, just regarding point 3, I was just wondering, this thing, work together, and so what do we mean with work together? It's just for clarification. Is it like everybody, or is it like certain like governmental organizations, or is it like a focus group, or is it really like everybody, like each citizen should look at it? What is the focus regarding that?
Yeah. What is the focus? I mean, yesterday we have discussed this already, I guess. So, in this form, yeah, I understand it as a general call for action for everybody,
Okay,
and how everybody then will be categorized or will be involved is another matter. But this is a general call for action.
So like, okay, everybody just
Yes, everybody.
trying to create awareness amongst everybody
Yes.
should, okay,
Yes,
that was.
yes. Okay. Yes, Pak. And then, sorry, Ibu. Sorry, Ibu first and then Bapak. Yes, can you help the mic, please?
Oke, baik, terima kasih. Saya Ambar. I think we should put a prerequisite condition before we have to look at the 4 points that are stated there. that before elaborate ethical, advocate data policies, work together, create action pattern, we should make sure that the cultural activists and practitioners could access and using big data in the right and proper way. Jadi harus ada semacam pengondisian terdahulu yang kemudian memastikan bahwa cultural practitioners and cultural activists could access and using big data in the right and the proper way. Saya belum melihat apakah bisa dimasukkan di 1, 2, 3 atau 4.
Okay.
Itu saja. Terima kasih.
Yes, we just but it's a valid point. So even before we talk about protecting, advocating, working, and creating something, then we actually should also make sure that the people are the main stakeholders, the cultural practitioners and
Equality of access.
the activists actually have the right to access big data, because big data is now very much controlled by big companies or private concerns. So then people, activists and practitioners should have the right to access them. And of course, this is not done overnight, so then we have to create a precondition, more forums and so on and so forth. Yes, please. I think this is a valid point, so if you want to add later. Is it still, oh sorry, is it related, Pak? Is this related to Ibu's point, then first Bapak and then also Bapak?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My name is Alfa Noranda. It's very related, I think, because in terms of reference, which the committee sends to me, there is 5 points that we should to understand for this sub-theme 2. There is point A, it's about best practice. The matter of point B is the matter of sovereign, and point C is identifying the actor, and the fourth is envision to the future, and the fifth is what expected the IFAC will do. When I see the conclusion of this seminar and presentation, we get this 4 points, but it's not related to the main purpose of this theme, because if I see in first action plan that it's not connected with the term of reference, so I think we should see the correlation between the purpose of the discussion and the action plan, what we should do.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
But yes, we note this concern, and then we come back later. But do you have? Sorry, I forgot. I didn't get your name. You wanted to say something in relation to Ibu's point? No. Bapak's point is that, in the terms of references, there were 5 points to be discussed yesterday and today. And the summaries, conclusions that we have here, the points, the calls for action, are actually not reflecting, according to Bapak, the terms of references. Well, let's get to that point later, but Ibu's point about access, the right to access big data for practitioners and cultural activists. Can we put this in, or should we put this in? Yes, please. Sorry, before we go further, I urge you to, we have to speed up the process. It's already, we only have half an hour left for sub-theme 2. So, but please.
I don't know if it's really relevant, Ibu's point, but one opportunity and an idea that I got only in the last year, it's really radical. Well, I just put it forward.
Yes.
In the movie The Circle, there was, in the end, the point that we open source every kind of code every kind of data, like everything. And this would make sure that we first off put control to every citizen in the world to control the abuse of big data. Then we could also ensure that everybody has access to big data. And we could also ensure that if abuse happens, everybody would recognize it and it would be more controllable. So open source just everything. Yes. But it's a really radical idea and just one solution to one problem.
Right, right. So open source, make every data available, just make everything open source. But then again, the question is that a practical solution? So I think the urge to just precondition, as Ibu was saying, create a precondition so that every cultural practitioner and cultural activist has the right to access big data, as simple as that. So I mean, then of course it's not going to change, as you were saying, radically how now data is being used or misused, but at least we have made a step forward, or we're making a step forward towards that direction. So, can we agree that we are at another point? So before even point one, so point one then becomes create, sorry, can you add for point one? Hello? Yeah, ditambah. Create a precondition that allows or gives the right to every cultural practitioner and or activist to access big data. Right? Is it this? Okay. Okay? You have an objection, or otherwise we move to sub-team 2. Yes, please.
I think we need to find other term for big data on that sentence, because big data is kind of a buzzword, because you need to be more specific.
Right.
What kind of database that you want to give access to the practitioners?
Right.
Is it the database owned by the government, or the database owned by the company, or every single database in Indonesia, or which one that you want to open access to the practitioners? Because big data is...
What do you suggest?
I think it's maybe for research purpose.
Yes.
It's the government data.
Okay.
A government collects the data, and the practitioners and activists has access, and not only access. I think the one of the Ibu's point, how the practitioners and activists trained to use the data and extract insight from the data.
Yeah,
so
that's access.
Access in terms of the data and also skills. I think that's also important to somehow.
Yes, capacity building is a part of precondition, and creating precondition. I mean, yes, cultural practitioners, they have to enhance their capacities in order to access. I mean, they have to know how to access before they can actually access. So I think it's part of precondition. But yeah, big data. Your point about big data, whose big data are we talking about? Ibu, do you have something specific in mind? Or is it, I mean, just any kind of big data? Because
biar nanti teman-teman yang kemudian menyusun redaksionalnya seperti apa.
Okay.
Karena saya pikir kita sudah di lapangan big data yang seperti apa yang dibutuhkan oleh teman-teman aktivis.
Okay.
Senian.
Yes, Ibu has a good suggestion. So a solution So big data, we all know what it means. We take notes about the concern, about how being more specific. Let the drafters then come up with a solution. Okay, let's move on to sub-theme 5. Yes, culture-based economy in the era of industrial revolution. I urge us all to speed up. Concentration of ownership by global online media companies monopolizing the process of production, distribution, and dissemination of cultural contents constitutes a risk to cultural plurality and freedom of expressions. I think we can agree on this, yes? So there's a risk if there is concentration of ownership of information, there is then a risk to cultural, cultural plurality and or even freedom of expression. Yes? Okay, moving on. Diversity of stakeholders participating in the production and dissemination of cultural contents is a precondition for a democratic and just society. So if our ideals are democracy and just societies, then we have to also think about diversity of stakeholders in the production and dissemination of cultural contents. So cannot take it for granted. Okay, let's move on. This asymmetry in the value chains, this asymmetry in the value chains needs to be rectified so as to reflect the voice of every nation and community of the world, in particular the developing countries. So this is talking about the unequal voice people have across the globe, right? Okay. In witness thereof, we propose these following points as action plan. Boleh sekaligus langsung, oh sorry, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 4 already. Ensure access of knowledge or technology for all to create equal playing field. Yes? Yes, okay. Let's move on. Develop a monitoring and evaluating mechanism that ensures a just and equitable cultural value chain for all members of global cultural ecosystem. Mbak Dewi, Dian, sorry. Huh? Dina, sorry. My bad.
I need to
my
digest first, but actually, since the first statement, like concentration of ownership, this
Yes.
is actually arguable because the ownership of global online media companies is not concentrated nowadays. So we need to think the...
Oh, sorry. What's meant here is concentration of ownership of
Yeah.
data by global online media.
Yeah, I mean like YouTube, by having YouTube to monopolize, to concentrate, is no longer appear. So yesterday we talked with YouTube.
Yes?
So all by means, YouTube actually happens to help disseminate or make inspiration. So it's not concentrating, it's not monopolizing, so it's actually open the access to everything. So I mean, we need to be carefully think about the word of concentrations and monopolizing is, that's two words are quite strong. So
Yeah, they are.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mbak Dewi,
Yeah,
Dian,
probably we can just put underline on that statement.
Okay. So find verdicts, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Please highlight concentration, concentration of ownership. Yes, di highlight aja.
Yeah.
Yellow. And then...
This is supposed to be a problem statement, but it is not the correct problem statement. Happens in the era
Yes.
of Industry 4.0 actually.
And monopolizing also.
Mm-hmm.
Monopolizing the process of production. Sampai situ. Distribution and dissemination. So culture consistency risk. Okay. But do you agree, if there is a monopoly, if there is concentration, then there is a risk?
It's not a monopoly, it's not a concentration, it's actually a gap. There's a gap. So if the first statement is for the aim of putting a problem statement.
Yes.
So the main problem in this era, actually, there is a gap between a cultural-based economy and the utilization of industry
Yes.
4.0.
Let's make it a sentence. So the gap.
The gap.
Yes. Between.
I can actually.
Okay.
I write something here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we feel a huge gap between traditional creative cultural industry
The gap between. Yes.
and they don't have enough capacity to face the challenge of industry 4.0.
Yes. I agree. I'm facilitating, but slowly, yeah.
Okay,
So
slowly,
the gap
yeah.
between.
So, mana tadi dia hilang? There is a huge gap
Yes.
between
Okay. Yeah.
traditional creative / cultural industry and udah belum?
Yep.
Dah. And they don't have enough capacity
Yes.
to face the challenge coming from industrial revolution 4.0. To face the challenge coming from
Industrial
Industrial
Revolution.
Revolution 4.0.
Revolution 4.0. Titik.
Yeah.
There is a risk. Jadi bisa langsung aja. Strike through concentration of ownership sampai a risk, sampai constitutes terus. Ya. Strike through aja. Strike through. Yes. There is a risk. Or this is a risk. Yeah, this is a risk to cultural plurality and freedom of expressions. Okay? There is a huge gap between traditional and creative industries, and they do not.
Traditional creative / cultural
Creative,
industry.
tambahin lagi, bukan di situ. Habis kreatif.
Creative
Okay.
/ cultural. Tradisionalnya nggak usah di slash. Atau nggak usah pakai tradisional ya?
Yeah.
Cultural udah include all.
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Cultural, yes, please. Creative /
cultural industry.
Cultural, yeah.
Yeah.
Traditionalnya hapus.
And they don't
Yes.
have enough capacity to face the challenge coming from the industrial revolution 4.0.
Yeah, this is a risk to, okay. Ya nanti draftingnya bisa di.
Yeah.
But this is a risk. I mean, we realize we all agree that the gap is posing a risk to cultural plurality and freedom of expressions, right? Okay. Yes.
There's actually other risk coming from this one: cultural plurality, freedom of expressions, creation of things. Because there's a gap.
Yes, but how? I mean, are they not included in freedom of in expressions? All these are expressions, right?
I just put it that way. Later on, we'll think it.
Okay,
we'll
just
think about it later.
expression, tolong di highlight. We will work on that later. But I mean, we can agree on the substance, right? I mean, there's a problem. Yes. Sorry, can you help?
Yeah, so now it's like cultural is like a substitute word for creative. So it's creative. If you want like separate, it should be creative industry and cultural industry. If
Okay.
there's a gap between, now it's like creative and cultural is like a substitute word, right?
Yes,
You
yes,
know
yes.
what I mean?
Okay. So, yeah, creative industry and cultural industry and yes.
Plus, I also think gap.
Sorry. Yes, I get your point.
Yeah.
Between creative and cultural industries and between these industries and who? The big companies or who? There's the gap between creative and cultural industry and who? Or is it between cultural
don't know.
industries and creative industries?
Creative and cultural industry and the industrial revolution 4.0. So huge gap between the players and the access of technology.
Yeah, but I mean, here we
Huge
are
gap
talking
between-
about players, creative and cultural industry, and then who's representing Industrial Revolution 4.0?
And the advancement of technology, usually after culture industry and the advancement, so the gap is between the creative and cultural players and the advancement of technology. So we miss that, the advancement of technology.
Okay.
Jadi gapnya di situ gitu. Harusnya ada kata-kata advancement of technology setelah cultural industry.
Tambahin aja coba.
Coba
Can you
Mas,
please add?
tolong.
Yes. Somebody wanted to say something. No? Okay. There's a huge gap between creative and cultural industries, and then Ibu.
Yeah, the creative / culture industry and the advancements of technology, advancement
Of technology, yes.
technology,
And
yeah, comma. They don't have capacity to face the challenge coming from,
the industries, meaning they is the industries, right? Yes.
or probably the advancement of technology in Industrial Revolution 4.0. Jadi the Industrial Revolution 4.0 change after the technology. Jadi they do not have enough capacity to face the challenge, titik gitu.
Ya, pelan-pelan. Diulang lagi.
Okay, coba. So I repeat ya, there is a huge gap between creative and culture industry and the advancement of technology from Industrial Revolution 4.0 comma.
Yeah,
Baru-
let's make it simple, Bu. There's a huge gap between creative and cultural industry and advancement of technologies from Industrial Revolution 4.0, comma, which is a risk to cultural plurality and freedom of expressions. The gap is a risk, right?
Also the not enough capacity to face the challenge.
Yes, but
also.
that's why they are in the gap, because they don't have the capacity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the gap itself is a risk. And the gap is created by the incapacity and so on and so forth. It's not just one factor, right?
Yeah.
So the gap is the problem.
Mhm.
Yes.
The
Which is the
capacity.
risk now.
Yeah.
Right?
Titik, udah betul.
Okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's move on. Which is the risk of cultural. Yeah. We only have 10 more minutes actually to discuss the points, the 4 points. Can we, scroll down, please. So 1, ensure access of knowledge or technology for all to create equal playing field. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, please, can you be somebody help? Yes.
I would recommend another point that is at the same level.
Yes.
Not only making it accessible, making knowledge and technology accessible to everybody, but on the other hand, maybe also restricting the speed at that technology is advancing. To keep up with moral and to ensure that the gap is not going, the gap is not getting bigger.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I understand your concern, but how? Is there a practical solution to restrict the advancement of technology?
There is, but not. It's not practical within the next 5 years.
Yes. Then we note this, and then we add it to the notes of the statement later on. Yes. Okay. Yes, you want to say, please.
Sorry sir, I can speak in Indonesia because
Sure.
Begini Pak, kalau sekarang untuk akses ilmu sama teknologi aja menurut saya itu kurang Pak, karena dalam modal kapital itu butuh ada finansial Pak. Jadi persoalannya adalah kenapa kelompok kultural itu tidak pernah bisa mengakses program dari pemerintah karena terhambat masalah perizinan. dan perizinan itu yang menghambat mereka untuk mengakses ilmu dan teknologi itu sendiri, Pak.
Oke.
Jadi butuh ada semacam kemudahan akses bagaimana mereka agar tidak disulitkan dalam hal administrasi, Pak.
Okay.
Terima kasih.
So his concern is about,
Probably we could add access to resources/knowledge/technology. So
Right.
financial includes in the resources.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
regulations.
Yeah. So it's not just access to the knowledge and technology, but he was also suggesting to other resources such as permission and financial resources. So
Just put resources, Mbak.
yes, of resources
sebelum knowledge.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Di nomor 1.
Ya, itu kan nomor
Ensure
1.
access of resources/knowledge.
Ya, sudah. Oh, sorry, here it's not done. Di belakang sudah, Bu.
Oke. Ini agak jereng ke sini.
Yeah. So they're using 2 computers in there, apparently. Okay, number 2, develop a monitoring and evaluating mechanism that ensures a just and equitable cultural value chain for all members of a global cultural ecosystem. So point is that, as you were saying, I mean, in order to somehow have a sense of control, we also have to monitor, to be able to monitor and to evaluate. And that our evaluation then will be heard by, or adhered to by people in power. Oops. Okay.
Check.
So yeah, but then
Check.
it's I mean, the main point here is the monitoring and evaluating mechanism. So it's about having a way or finding a way to actually
Check.
have more say, more control
Check.
on functions which were mentioned before. So can we agree? I think this is quite straightforward.
Check.
There is a way, tools rather, to ensure a just and equitable cultural value chain. Right. Okay. Moving on. Number 3, please. To create a common platform which promotes people-driven technology. Difference, empathy, social solidarity, and human sensibility. The point of question here, our main point is the common platform. So let's just
I'm asking about this agenda, is it going to be applicable for the next 5 years or else? Because now we are changing the direction.
working already. Yes, thank you. Technology, Industrial Revolution 4.0. Create with, but not which. Yeah, you were saying. Or which? No, it should be which, right? Okay, and collaboration with the government and the private sector. Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. So last one. Sorry? In collaboration, scratch? Okay, in collaboration, ya, hapus saja. So, create a common platform with the government, bukan yang itu, yang di atas. A common platform, innya hapus, collaboration hapus. Yeah, is it? Oh, sorry. My bad. No, cuman sampai collaboration aja. Yeah, yes, in collaboration. Okay. Okay, yes, okay, moving on. Last one, advocate the recognition of diversity inside creative industries, not only its cultural content, but also the cultural background of the people behind it. I think this is a matter of recognizing, so that then, for instance, somebody was mentioning me, was thinking about how if, let's say, a motif that is part of a relief of an old heritage is being used, then it has to be recognized by the ones who is using the motif or to produce new things, actually, basically. So that's what is said here. It's about recognizing. Now it's possible if you have something that's already public domain, as Payudi was saying, it's like you don't have to mention the source. So if there's let's say, a motif of batik in one of the reliefs of Candi Borobudur, because there's no copyright to the reliefs, then you don't have to mention, or whoever wants to make a nice new batik with that motif doesn't have to mention that it's actually inspired by or something like that, the reliefs in Candi Borobudur. But here we are saying that's exactly what they have to do. They have to recognize, they have to mention the source or the inspiration and so on. Yes, please. Mike, please. Just use mine.
Makasih banyak. Regarding that and regarding also 2.2, I think it would be much better to lessen the need for control and to create a community, a global community built on trust and truth. So I would actually say that it's better to motivate people to give contribution to the original creator instead of controlling them and forcing them to do so. So motivating people to give contribution of their own free will instead of forcing them to do so in the beginning. So basically, that is my point.
Okay, yeah, a valid point as well. I mean, we can also do it the other way around, so that and encouraging people to share. Basically, that's what you're saying. So how about that? So that we don't then use a somewhat like protectionist approach, but rather to encourage people to share, to actively share, so that then we have a very different culture-based economy than the one that we have now. So actually, we are proposing a new kind of economy, is it? Yes. So how? So there are two ways. One is then to, as he was saying, or suggesting, is to encourage people to share. And by sharing, of course, they making themselves known, so that then they can also voice their concerns and rights. at the same time. So it's another approach. Was this discussed yesterday? Yes. So there are two approaches. One is, of course, to protect somehow the sources and so on, but also, on the other hand, it's also possible to encourage, enable the sources to come up and stand on the global platform. Yes, please.
Well, actually, the practice actually including both. Yeah, in terms of you mean this by IP, right? There is a different value chain for IP. So first you create, you register, means that you protect. After you registered, you make sure that it is shared or commercialized. After you commercialize, you can actually get your rights after someone's being someone use your IPs. So it is another value chain different with the each value chain of every creative and cultural sectors. So by means of how to protect and to commercialize, both are actually in the same value chain. So it is a process, Pak.
Okay.
Yeah. To
So
share
actually,
and to,
yes.
yeah, to share and to commercialize means that in regards to the one who actually hold the IPs themselves. So, but there is actually another approach which is not supported by the IP law. It is called Creative Commons Law, CC. No, there's another approach for artists or players who wants to be more recognized, and they are not famous yet. So they are using this kind of commercializations of their Creative Commons license to grab more users, customers, and else. But this action is not actually supported by the IP laws. So those two are different actions, and mostly the Creative Commons one is not supported by every kind of IP regulations used in every countries. But for those Creative Commons artists, they can still use that because it is common. There's a different usage of symbols you can use. Like you can recreate, you can remix, you can adapt, you can rearrange. Yeah, CC, CDC, ACB, you can learn about that. But in my opinion, we cannot support that action in these terms because it is different.
Okay.
Different word.
Okay. Yeah. Back to point 4, please. Yes, your concern is taken. It will be noted. There will be notes to this action plan. But point 4, I think, still stands. Advocate the recognition of diversity inside creative industry, not only its cultural content, but also the cultural background of the people behind it. So it's not enough just to put a name. We have to give explanations about cultural content, backgrounds of the people who have or who were in a part of producing the cultural content, right? Okay, so with all its limitations, I think we have a draft of action plan that we can put forward to the committee, and rest assured, it will be rewritten by legal drafters, so it will be nice and proper, and still your concerns also will be included. So let's end this session by that, and let's have a big applause for all of us so that we finally have come up with an action plan. Thank you, and thank the moderators for joining me on the stage. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke lah Pak ya.